Welcome to my video with some anatomy and physiology study tips and tricks. We all know anatomy and physiology can be a very demanding class filled with very much memorization. That's the key point, memorization. When I took the class, it was very hard for me to both pay attention in class and write notes. So I suggest, if your professor is willing, try to get the professor to send you the PowerPoint slides ahead of time if it's a lecture. If it's not, and there's any way you can write your notes before class, I suggest you do so. What I would do was I would write my notes ahead of time and I would leave space. Either every other page I would leave blank, or I would leave a column of blank space down the right or left side of every page. That way, when the teacher or professor is actually teaching the material and lecturing, you can more pay attention to what they're saying and not be stressed out about writing and trying to multitask and then sometimes not comprehend as well. The reason I leave the space in the page is because if the professor says something that wasn't necessarily in the slides that you feel is important to know for a test or just to know in general, you can write it down in those blank areas. So you're still taking notes while the professor's lecturing, but not nearly as many. This will keep your head much clearer and allow you to concentrate on the content rather than get stressed out if you're falling behind trying to write as fast as the professor speaks. What I would do then would be to go home after class and reread my notes, and I would get out flashcards and I would make a question, a potential test question, for everything you possibly could ask as a test question. So imagine you're the professor. What are you going to ask on a test based on these notes? Anything that could possibly be a test question, I would write as a question on my flashcards. Sometimes I would end up with a pretty thick stack of flashcards, but it would cover all of my notes completely. I would then take the flashcards and open up the voice recorder app on my cell phone. We all have these. If it's not already on your phone, you can go to the App Store and you can get one for free, a voice recorder app. Your computers or tablets should also have them, or if not, you can get them from the App Store. I would then start a recording and read the question from the flashcard. So for example, I would say, what is the largest bone in the body? I would wait a few seconds. Femur. Go on to the next question. What blood vessel brings blood to the heart? Wait a few seconds. Veins. Now, the reason I wait a few seconds between saying the question and saying the answer is because you need a few seconds to think when you're listening to it back. And if you need more time than the space you left, you can always hit pause when you're listening to it back. So you go through your entire stack of flashcards with your voice recorder in that fashion. Ask the question, wait a few seconds, give the answer. Ask the next question, wait a few seconds, give the answer. Now, at the end, sometimes I would have 20-minute long voice recordings. But what this allows you to do is you can now listen to it when you're driving, when you're laying in bed. A great thing to do is to listen to it while you're doing cardio training. If you use the elliptical machine, or if you use a treadmill, or if you go for a walk or a run, when your body is working out or doing cardio, more blood is flowing through your system and it actually helps you retain information better. So I would try to study while I was working out and it would help me immensely. And I have to say, you will start knowing so well the audio recording, that not only will you know the answer, you'll start knowing what question you're going to ask next. Because audio and video, looking through your eyes and hearing through your ears, they trigger different types of memory. And the more types of memory you trigger, the better you're going to remember this stuff for the test. Okay. I would even lay in bed and have it playing on repeat in my ear as I slept, because I figured even subconsciously, you have to be retaining some of the knowledge. Now, that's quite extreme, but I tried it. Did it work? I don't know. But I would definitely suggest that. And then you save the voice recordings. So when you have to prepare for a midterm or a final, if it's cumulative, you can just go back and listen to the recordings again. And you are literally quizzing yourself on your entire notebook. Now, another option is, again, using the App Store. Let's say that you're covering the skeletal system. There's a really good chance that the App Store on your phone or tablet or computer or a website has a game that will help you learn and study the skeletal system. So it can't hurt to do that, because sometimes when you play a game, it makes it a little bit more fun and you tend to trick yourself into learning better. So definitely visit the App Store and look for games based on the system of the body that you're studying at the moment. Also, I would make mnemonic devices. So for example, if there were different types of cells you had to remember, I would write down each type, and then I would use the first letter in each and make a quick saying, something that I could remember easily. And then when I'm taking the test, I would remember that saying and think, okay, first letter of each of those stands for a different type of cell. And then once you have the first letter, it's so much easier to remember the name. And finally, did you ever notice when you have to learn different types of cells, like epithelial cells, for example, sometimes the lab book or manual or your professor will give you an actual picture of the cell that was taken with an electron microscope of some sort. But sometimes you'll have a sketch of what the cell looks like. So keep in mind that when you take your practical or when you take a test, it could be either. You may get an actual microscopic picture of the cell, or you may get a sketch of the cell or tissue. So it's always important to study both. Don't just study the pictures, and then if they're sketches, you're not sure which is which. So always study both. And another piece of advice, and the final piece of advice, find multiple pictures and multiple sketches of each type of cell and each type of tissue. That way, it doesn't really matter which picture your professor chooses to put on the practical or test. You'll be ready for just about anything that's thrown at you. So this helped me get a really good grade in anatomy and physiology, and it also helped me retain the information long after the class ended. These are my suggestions to you. You may have your own. If you'd like to leave a comment or email us and let us know your tips and tricks, you can do so by emailing tutoring@mccc.edu. I hope these tips help, and good luck in your classes.